But if you really want to do something, you could do it. Just go out there and do it and get it done. Don't think that because you're too old or because you're too heavy or because you're anything other than what you think is the norm. Just go out there and do it because you got this. Hi, I'm Hilary Topper, and you are listening to Run to the Top podcast.
Hilary Topper, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's great to have you here, and we'll be discussing your new book here, which is called From Couch Potato to Endurance Athlete, a portrait of a non-athletic triathlete. The first question that I want to ask you actually comes from the preface section of the book where you say, quote, "There are so many running and triathlon books on the market today, but none address a huge group of individuals of which I am proud to be a part of, the back of the packers," end quote. I was really intrigued by this. Can you explain a bit more about why you believe this group of runners in our sport and in triathlon tend to get neglected and perhaps even disrespected and stigmatized?
I mean, I think that I give a really good example in the book when I went to the expo at the New York City Marathon. I was sitting there listening to the race and what it was going to be like. And what was interesting to me was that they said, when you get over the 59th Street Bridge, you're going to hear a roar and it's going to be incredible. And I went over the 59th Street Bridge. There was nobody there. There was no roar. And I really didn't even know if they were still going to give out medals at the point that I finished. Now they wait and they do give out medals to the finishers. But back when I did it in 2016, I wasn't really sure if I was going to get a medal, So that was, and the other thing that was interesting about that with the New York City Marathon was that at one point they opened up the roads to traffic. And they told us all to go onto the sidewalk. And I was with a group of people from England and Switzerland and, they were from Germany. And they were screaming, "We're not going on the sidewalk. No way." So I just stayed with them. So the course, officially was open, was closed. And, so I still ran it. So, yeah, I mean, I think that as a back of the packer, we do get neglected. There aren't many books out there about this group. And yet there's a lot of us out there. And we struggle, we want to be out there. We're doing it for our health. We're doing it for our well-being, but we know we're never going to place. I mean, unless there's no one else in the age group.
I think we should sort of get to the part of the book where you talk about this transformation. At 48 years old, you decided to take up running. And there's this particular section of the book where you said that you were intrigued by runners and there was something magical about watching people run. Can you talk about that impact a bit more and what led to the switch in your lifestyle to make it all happen?
So I was working ridiculous amount of hours in my business. I have a public relations business, and during that time, I was just constantly working, trying to hustle to get new business for my office and to the staff. So I was taking care of my staff and I was also taking care of my kids. My kids were young at the time and, I had to be obviously around for them to help them with different things. So I was between the business and my home life, I was constantly juggling those two and really focusing, more on the business, in terms of going to cocktail parties and drinking a lot and eating a lot. And I was packing on the weight and I was thinking to myself, I am going to be 50 and I need to make a change. I was really nervous that I would end up like my mom and my mother's family. My mother's family, they're all obese, they're Eastern European, so they're real big women. And this was, something that I didn't want to follow. And in terms of the Wantor Parkway, when I was watching the runners, so we have this parkway on Long Island called the Wantor Parkway, and it's a place that you could it's a 17, almost 18-mile route that we usually use for the bike riding. We do it a couple of times, or we use it for running, for training and stuff like that. So anyway, I would pull over on the side of the parkway and watch the runners running by and thinking to myself, wow, there's something special and magical about this that I want to try. I want to try to get into this. I want to be a runner. And my first step was to join a gym, basically. I don't know why I thought that, but I did. And I joined the New York Sports Club in Long Beach, which is where I lived at the time. And that's Long Beach, Long Island. And I joined the gym, and the personal trainer says to me, go downstairs and work on the treadmill. And I get on the tread. I'm like, I don't even know how to turn on a treadmill. Like, I had never been in a gym. This was the first time in my life. And so that was a really big thing for me to learn how to even walk on the treadmill. I had to actually ask somebody. I stopped them from running.
Can you talk about just how your life experiences have maybe added to the mental toughness in how you approach the sport?
Yeah. I mean, I grew up, my mom was really controlling, and yet she was also very, very sickly. She was always a sick person. She had post-polio syndrome, and she had really bad COPD and asthma. And my dad worked, 3 jobs, and he was never home. And when he was home, my mother would rile him up, and, he'd, get the belt and start beating us up for no reason. And it was, so when I wanted to go to college, my parents were like, no, we're not, you don't need to go to college. You're a woman. I mean, it's crazy, right? Like, it's 1979, 1980. And my parents were like, no, you could just be a secretary. We're not going to help you. If you want to go to college, you need to do it yourself, because we're not giving you a dime. And literally, they did not give me a dime. They didn't help me financially. They didn't help me emotionally. So I had to go out and get myself a full-time job. I went to CUNY Hunter College for undergraduate and CUNY Baruch College for graduate school. And the whole entire time I worked full-time. I went to school at night. So all my friends were old. They were much older than me because they were all working people. But, I did it because I knew that I could not. And my parents, my entire life, they struggled. They were both working class people, and they always struggled for money. Money was like the big issue in the house. Like, we couldn't get things like the other kids got. Like, I remember one year everybody had this like varsity jacket with their name on it, and I wanted it so bad. And my mother said, well, if you want it, go get a job and get it, So I worked. High school, worked as much as I could, got the money, bought the jacket, and then the jacket happened to spell my name wrong. It spelled it Hilary with 2 L's. So, and my mother was like, oh, well, you're just going to have to live with that, I mean, I don't know. If I were her, I would say, this is unacceptable, redo the jacket, but she made me live with it. And actually, my daughter wears it today. But that was something, that's a story that really drives it home, that anytime I needed anything, I had to do it on my own. I had, when I went to college, my parents didn't support me full time. I remember asking my parents, if they would lend me like $50, and they were like, no, well, sorry, so I just did not get any support.
Even though, I think most folks would recognize that as an incredibly unfair circumstance, and you had to persevere an incredible amount. Do you reflect back on those experiences sort of grateful in the sense that they were there because they taught you, what it means to overcome and to have like an overall positive outlook that things can get better? Was there any of that?
Yeah. I mean, for me, my driving force had always been that I would never want to be like my parents, and I would never, so I worked really hard and made money on my own and, whatever. And eventually, as I got older, I ended up helping them out. But But yeah, I think that in a way, looking back, although it bothered me and it was like upsetting to me, I feel like it made me stronger as a person. And, I think there's a place in the book where I'm talking about how I did the Las Olas triathlon. It was like one of my early triathlons, and my dad came to it. My mother had passed at that point, and my dad came out to watch. And after it was finished, he said to me, "Hilary, I'm so proud of you." And it just blew me away because he had never said that to me before. I mean, I knew he was proud of me, but he never said it to me. They used to like always keep my clippings of all my newspaper articles and stuff like that. But I didn't hear it often, and I sometimes needed it, but I found it from within. And that's really where I started to focus.
You say that if you want to make a change in running, start today. Can you talk more about what you mean there and why that's important?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I see it even, like I'm in Weight Watchers right now, and I go to the groups and, people say, I run, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't walk, you hear every excuse in the book. But if you really want to do something, you could do it. Just go out there and do it and get it done. Don't think that because you're too old or because you're too heavy or because you're anything, other than what you think is the norm. Just go out there and do it because you got this, and that's really what I was trying to say there.
Another one, when you start out, focus internally. I thought that was interesting as well. Talk about that a bit.
Yeah. I mean, I think what happens is that you start comparing yourself to other people. And, that's something that you need to like internalize and think, I got this, proud of myself. I'm going to do this. I mean, I feel like I am coaching myself all the time. I'm constantly telling myself, you got this, you can do this, I mean, sometimes I even say it out loud, I don't know, people looking at me like I'm really strange, but you know what, you got to do that. You got to really talk yourself into it. It's all self-talk. It's like, I remember going to a cocktail party and thinking, oh, how am I going to do this? How am I going to go to a cocktail party? I don't know anybody in the room. How am I going to get through this and meet all these people? And I thought, okay, I got this. I'm good at what I do. People like me. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to shake everybody's hand. And I'm going to collect all the business cards and I'm going to make contacts. And that's exactly what I did.
You say when you race an endurance race, you have a lot of time with yourself to think about things. Dedicate every mile to people who meant something to you. I think this is an excellent strategy. So talk about this a bit.
Thank you. So yes, so you do have a lot of time to think. And it was during the New York City Marathon training where I just trained by myself. I mean, now I have a running group and I could train with them. But at the time that I wrote this book, I did not have a running group and I was running alone, 9 miles, 13 miles, 20 miles, 23 miles. And when you're running alone, you start to like focus internally and certain things. I started coming to terms with things that happened with my mom. I never got to resolve those issues and I was able to start resolving those issues while I was running. And the other thing is during the New York City Marathon to get myself to, just enjoy the moment and enjoy each mile and try to like really focus on that instead of like, oh my God, I'm in so much pain. I don't know how I'm going to get through this. What I did was I dedicated each mile to a person or something that meant something to me, in my life, so obviously, like mile 20, I dedicated it to my sister's dog, Gino, because the dog was like a very vicious dog and always bit me and, run after me. And I thought, oh, this is a good one, like, let me think about Gino during mile 20, because that's a hard mile or whatever it was. I forget exactly what it was. Might have been Danielle. It was 20. I'm not sure, but in any event, it was up there. I did dedicate a mile, to each of my children children, to my whole family. I mean, everybody got a mile. I dedicated a mile to Jeff Galloway because he really was my running coach during that time. And he was amazing. My triathlon coach, Danielle Sullivan. And then I dedicated one of the miles to, it was also a later mile, to everyone who says they can't, because you can. And then the last mile was for me because I was proud of myself for doing this.
You felt the need to rediscover your love for the sport. And I'm wondering if you can talk generally about this phenomenon where we're forced to reevaluate why we do what we do. And I know that the longer you're in the running game, for example, your why changes over the years, over the decades. So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I think what happens even with like Ironman competitions, I find that with a lot of my friends where they do an Ironman or a half Ironman and they get burnt out and they're like, they can't, it's just, they feel like they just can't do it anymore. Or, for me, it was, I just mentally had a meltdown after my sister passed because it was so emotional for me. And I thought, you know what, I'm so focused on this. Why am I focused on this? There's so many other things to be focused on. And, and then I realized, when I didn't have an actual race to focus on, just go out there and swim, bike and run, I started to really love it again. Like it just became so part of me and my personality and who I am. And, I just feel like that is just, it just really helped me both, emotionally and physically, to do this.